I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There, in the faint glow of my garage, stood Mr. Harrison, the head of our homeowners association, HOA. He was messing with the lock on my garage door as if he owned the place. Something felt off, but it wasn't until I caught the glint in his eyes focused, almost cocky, that I understood what he was up to. He wasn't just poking around to check the property. He was after my car. The car in question was my treasure, a 1967 Chevy Camaro, painted a deep midnight blue with sleek black leather seats and an engine that growled to life with a turn of the key. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a family heirloom, handed down from my grandfather. It meant the world to me. But the HOA had recently tightened its rules, and they'd gotten absurd. My Camaro, apparently, didn't fit their neighborhood aesthetic. They called it a violation. I stepped forward, ready to demand answers. But before I could say a word, a voice cut through the air, one I'd never forget. "Back away from the car, Mr. Harrison," it snapped. I turned to see my grandmother, Evelyn, standing there. At 72, she wasn't your average grandma. A self-proclaimed gun enthusiast, she'd taught me to shoot when I was a kid. She loved her firearms as much as she loved her family, and she made sure everyone knew it. I'd gotten used to her quirks, but this was different. This time, she wasn't just chatting about her hobby, she was drawing a line. Harrison froze, his hands still on the lock, his gaze shifting to Evelyn. He clearly hadn't expected her to show up. After all, it's not every day a petite, gray-haired woman puts a chill down an HOA president's spine. "Ma'am, I'd advise you to stay out of this," he said, his voice shaky. "We're just following protocol." Evelyn didn't budge. "You think you can stroll into my grandson's garage and take his car? Not while I'm breathing." Harrison glanced around, maybe hoping for backup, but all he saw was Evelyn, arms crossed, her face set like stone. The tension stretched on forever. My pulse raced. Was this actually happening? Was Harrison really going to steal my car with my grandma watching? Then, just as the standoff peaked, Evelyn stepped closer. Harrison flinched, stumbling back. Before I could stop her, she reached into her bag and pulled out something I'd only ever seen on her shelf, a polished revolver. She raised it, the metal catching the dim light. "Do I need to remind you that breaking into private property with intent to steal is against the law?" she asked, calm as if she were discussing dinner plans. Harrison's face drained of color as he stared at the gun. I could see him calculating his next move, and it didn't take long for him to back down. Hands up, his earlier bravado melted away. But as he turned to leave, he threw a parting shot over his shoulder. "This isn't finished. You'll pay for this." The threat sent a shiver through me. What did he mean? What was he planning? Evelyn didn't reply. She lowered the revolver, tucked it back into her bag, and gave me a look that said we weren't done. My heart was still hammering, but I couldn't help feeling a surge of pride. My grandma had just faced down an HOA tyrant like it was nothing. Still, as Harrison vanished into the darkness, I wondered what he'd do next. Would he really come back? "Get inside, kid," Evelyn said, her tone all business. "We need to talk." I nodded, still rattled, and locked the door behind us, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't scared of Harrison himself, I was scared of what he could pull off. HOA presidents don't take defeat lightly. Evelyn set her bag on the kitchen table and looked me square in the eye. "You know he's not dropping this, right?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I know." She sat down, tapping her fingers on the table, lost in thought. Back in my day, punks like him didn't get away with this crap. But now, he's got the HOA in his pocket. If he wants trouble, he'll make it happen. I slumped into a chair across from her, replaying the scene in my head. "Why's he so fixated on my car, Grandma? It's not bothering anybody." She shook her head. "It's not about the car, kid. It's about power. He wants everyone to know he's in charge. And when you push back, that's when guys like him get nasty." I let out a sharp breath and leaned back. "So what's our move?" Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "We stay sharp, keep our eyes open, and most importantly," she tapped her bag where the revolver sat, "we stay ready." I wasn't sure if I felt reassured or more on edge, but I knew she was right. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The house was too still, no coffee brewing, no morning TV blaring. I dragged myself to the kitchen. Evelyn was there, sipping coffee by the window, staring outside. Without turning, she said, "Check the garage." My gut sank. I grabbed my keys, bolted to the back door, and flung the garage open. My Camaro was still there, but it was a wreck. The windshield was shattered, the tires slashed, and the hood pried open, wires torn out like it had been gutted. I clenched my fists. Harrison. Evelyn appeared behind me, her face unreadable. Told you. I stormed inside, grabbed my phone, and called the cops. A bored-sounding officer answered. 911. What's your emergency? I took a deep breath. Someone broke into my garage and trashed my car. He asked a few questions, but when I mentioned the HOA, his tone shifted. Oh, an HOA issue. I gritted my teeth. It's a crime. Well, sir, without evidence pointing to someone specific, there's not much we can do. File a report, but this sounds like a civil matter. My grip tightened on the phone. So someone can destroy my property, and you won't help? I'm saying without witnesses or footage, it's your word against theirs. I hung up, fury bubbling inside me. Evelyn sighed. Told you they'd be useless. I ran a hand through my hair. Now what? We just let Harrison win. She smirked. Oh, sweetie, we're just warming up. The day dragged on, my mood souring by the hour. I spent it in the garage, assessing the damage, trying to salvage something. It wasn't about cost, it was about principle. By nightfall, I decided, if the HOA wanted to fight dirty, I'd fight back. I dug into the HOA bylaws, hunting for leverage. Then I found ETA rule buried deep. No HOA officer may enforce policies if they've breached community trust. If I could prove Harrison broke in, I could oust him. But I needed evidence. That night, Evelyn crept up behind me as I checked the garage lock. He'll be back, she said. I nodded. I'm banking on it. We hatched a plan. I set up a hidden camera in the garage, covering every angle. Then Evelyn's surprised Mesh fetched a shotgun from her room and set it by the door. I blinked. Grandma, what? She shrugged. I'm a light sleeper. If someone sneezes near this garage, I'll know. I laughed despite myself. Remind me not to miss curfew. She grinned. You better not. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak had me on edge, my mind spinning with what Harrison might try next. At 2:47 a.m., I checked my phone, willing myself to relax. Thin bang, a crash from the garage jolted me awake. I leapt out of bed and ran to Evelyn's room. She was already up, shotgun in hand. We didn't need words, she nodded, and we moved to the back door. Another bang, then a muffled curse. Someone was inside. Evelyn signaled me to hang back, then kicked the door open, stepping out with the shotgun leveled. There, caught in the act, was Harrison, frozen like a deer in headlights. For a moment, no one moved. Then Evelyn's voice sliced through the night. Boy, I hope you're ready to answer for this. Harrison's smugness vanished, his hands rising slowly as he stared down the barrel. Let's not do anything rash, he stammered. Rash? Evelyn echoed, her tone icy. You broke in, trashed his car, and now you're back for more. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Caught you cold, Harrison. And it's all on tape. I pointed to the camera's blinking light. His face twisted in panic. Look, this is a misunderstanding. Explain how breaking in at 3 a.m. is a misunderstanding. Evelyn cut in, stepping closer. He floundered, grasping for excuses, but came up empty. You've got nothing, do you? I said. He shook his head fast. Okay, I screwed up. But we can settle this, no cops. I narrowed my eyes. Like you settled my car? He winced. I'll pay for it, cash, just don't call the police. Evelyn laughed, cold and sharp. Oh, now you're scared of the law? Harrison backed up. This is bigger than me. The HOA board TV been after that car. If I didn't act, someone else would have. I raised an eyebrow. So you're their errand boy? His face flushed. It's complicated, not really, Evelyn said, grip steady on the shotgun. You broke in, we caught you, and now you're done. His hands shook. I've got a family, a reputation, please. If this gets out, I'm finished. I studied him, the man who'd tormented me for months, now begging. I took a deep breath. You're right, Harrison. If this gets out, you're toast. And that's exactly what's happening. I dialed the police. His eyes widened. Wait, yes, I'd like to report a break-in, I said into the phone. We've got the guy detained. Evelyn smirked, shotgun unwavering. Harrison muttered. You just made a huge mistake. I met his gaze. No, you did. The next half hour was a blur, cops swarming, lights flashing. An officer, A tall guy named Carter sighed when he saw Evelyn's shotgun. "Evelyn, put it down," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. She grinned, setting it aside. "Just keeping us safe, officer." Carter shook his head. "You and your guns." They cuffed Harrison, who stayed silent, knowing he was trapped. As they shoved him into the cruiser, he glared at me. "This isn't over. You don't know what you've started." I didn't blink. "Neither do you." Carter lingered after they drove off. "You really stirred up the HOA, huh?" I snorted. "They started it." He chuckled. "Not surprised. That board's been a mess for years. You got the break-in on camera?" I nodded. "Every second." "Good," he said. "That'll stick in court." Evelyn smirked. "What about the HOA? You letting them run this place like a mafia?" Carter sighed. "HOA stuff's usually out of our hands, but if Harrison's breaking laws, it could spark a bigger investigation." My ears perked up. "You mean take them down?" He shrugged. "If there's more to find, maybe." Evelyn cackled. "Oh, I'd love to see that." For the first time in ages, I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't just about my car Anna Maria, it was about dismantling a rotten system. I was ready. But then Carter's radio crackled. "Carter, we've got something at the station. Get here now." His face darkened. "Copy." He looked at me. "Stay low, kid. This might just be the start." Then he sped off. I turned to Evelyn. "What was that about?" She tapped her bag. "No clue, but we'll find out." She was right. If Harrison wasn't bluffing about the HOA's reach, we'd just made some serious enemies. The air felt thick after the cops left. I stood in the driveway, staring down the empty street, Carter's words echoing. This might just be the start. Evelyn nudged me. "You okay, kid?" I exhaled slowly. If Harrison's telling the truth, the whole HOA's in on something big. She smirked. "Then we keep hitting till they drop." I smiled at her grit, but I knew it wouldn't be simple. We secured the garage, checked the cameras, and went inside. But as I reached to turn off the porch light, I froze. A black SUV idled at the streets and not a neighbor's car, engine humming. Evelyn saw it too. "That's new." I swallowed. "Yeah." We watched, unmoving. Then its headlights flared, and it peeled out into the night. Evelyn sighed. "Yep, we've definitely ticked someone off." I clenched my fists. Let them be mad. The next morning, I headed to the station. I wasn't waiting for the HOA to strike again. I needed answers. Carter was there, looking grim. "Kid, we need to talk," he said, pulling me aside. I crossed my arms. "What's up?" He showed me a grainy security photo, 3 figures by a storage unit. He zoomed in. My stomach dropped. One was Harrison. "Wait, he was arrested last night." Carter's jaw tightened. "Not anymore." I stared. "They let him go?" My blood ran cold. "We had proof." He held up a hand. "Someone pulled strings. He's out with a slap on the wrist." I raked a hand through my hair. Harrison wasn't just some HOA bully had pull. "So what now?" Carter hesitated, then whispered, "The HOA's not just about rules. I think they're into fraud, extortion, maybe money laundering." My breath hitched. "A crime ring." He nodded. "And Harrison's just the start." My pulse raced. This was way beyond my carway. We're up against something dark, and they knew I was a threat. That night, a storm rolled in, rain pounding, lightning cracking the sky. I paced the living room, nerves frayed. Evelyn cleaned her revolver at the table, humming like it was routine. "Harrison's out," I said. She didn't look up. "Expected that." I exhaled hard. "Grandma, this isn't just the HOA anymore. Carter thinks it's serious crime." She met my eyes. "And that's trouble. If they've got that kind of juice, they can do anything." She was right, they could. Then boom, an explosion shook the house. Windows rattled, lights flickered. I bolted up. "What the?" Evelyn grabbed her gun and raced for the door. I followed, heart hammering. We hit the porch, and my garage was ablaze, flames roaring, smoke choking the air. My Camaro was inside. I lunged forward, but Evelyn yanked me back. "Too late, kid," she shouted over the fire's roar. Through the rain and smoke, I saw him, Harrison, standing at the street's edge, smirking. Then he hopped into a black SUV and vanished. My fist shook. This wasn't about a car anymore. This was war.